Hello, family. Welcome to the Wealth Cycle, where we show you how to build a financial legacy, and we even show you how to build generational wealth. You hear me say this all the time. I'm really excited about this episode, but I am really excited about this episode, and let me tell you why. We're going to talk about how to invest and how to build wealth God's way. There's something called a wealth gap right now. You'll see where the rich get richer, and they say the poor get poorer. That also happens in the United States. But then also, it happens also ethnically, meaning that African Americans, there's a wealth gap. Then also gender, there's a wealth gap. But today we want to show you how to close that gap and how to build wealth generationally. In the Bible, it says in Matthew 25:14, a man goes on a journey and he entrusts 3 servants. To one he gives 5 talents, to one he gives 2 talents, to one he gives 1 talent, based on their ability how they operate. The one that had 5 went out and doubled it to 10. The one that had 2 doubled it to 4. The one that had 1 went out and buried it in the ground and hid his master's wealth. What do we learn from that? And I want you to see yourself in that scripture. Are you a 5-talent person? Because look how much that was actual gold. Like, imagine that adjusted for inflation today was he gave them over $1 million. And then they doubled it. But then, hey, you may not have been given the resources that somebody else has been given, and you were a 2-talent person. And then how you doubled it. But Lord, help us today for the one that was given 1 talent based on their ability. But now today they have something called credit cards. They come back owing money for the master's money. Because when he came back, what do we have to show for it? So today we're going to show you how to manage things God's way. Last thing is that if you could hold up 3 fingers, whenever you make money, there's only 3 things you can do with it. The first is spend it. We won't spend any time on that. I think most of us got that down. The second is you can lend it. That means put it into a bank account and get 0.0001% interest. And the third thing you can do is you can own something. We're going to show you how to own things. Are you ready? Ready, set, grow. Hey family, give me a high five. I bet you there's 5 people that you can think of that you can share this with. We want to make it easy for you to ask a question. Just put it right there in the chat. We may not be able to answer all the questions, but we'll do our very best. You guys, welcome to the Wealth Cycle family. I just want to let you know who we have with us right now. We have Crystal Moselle. Now look, you see she got a notepad. See, just you can look at Crystal, look back, and guess what? You done saved some money already. She did an episode about saving money. I started taking notes. So she's a blessing in teaching all the areas. I'm excited about what she has to say. And then who do we have right next? We got the guru. We got the maven. We got the organizational leader in all the areas. We got Danette Wilkerson. How you doing, Danette?
I'm good. Glad to be back. Hey, George.
Good.
Hey, Crystal.
Good. So you guys already know. I already told everybody. I'm excited. I came down today excited because you guys know I get excited when we learn about people investing. But I do want to just have our conversation at least start off with you guys, the wealth gap. As you see, as in the richest, like they always say, like the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And we'll see how much we can delve this, but I want everyone to understand this, is that you'll see the economy happen, like where people will say interest rates are rising. You see how inflation went up, and you see how different things are happening in these areas. Or they say, then they said, we're in a technical recession, that's 2 negative quarters of GDP. But do you guys know that people actually get better financially during difficult times?
If they do the right thing.
If they what? If they do what?
Do the right thing.
If they do the right thing. And that's how we want to make sure that they do that. Do you have any comment about that as far as the wealth gap, and then also just that you see out there and what we're doing?
Most definitely. It is widening as we speak because we are not preparing for, or have not prepared, because now it's too late for preparation, right? It's not too late. Let me not say that. It's never too late, as long as you have air in your body. But because we have not prepared sooner, that gap is widening. So we're going to talk about today, Pastor George, how we can shrink that gap.
Right. And so one of the things is there was a Negro poet once. And this Negro poet said, if you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. So that's why we want to make sure we're doing things that we're going to do to stay ready. Mm-hmm. Also, Danette, also, and everyone, I talked about, the Bible says, you've seen me minister this all over the world, is that someone was given 5 talents. You guys, this is in Matthew 25. 2 talents. So you understand that if you take a talent that was of gold, if you translate that into today's dollars, inflation adjusted for inflation, not this year's inflation, but previous inflation, that's $250,000 a talent. So you see how people are given resources and they have to say, hey, how do we manage them? Mm-hmm. So I just want to go on record and just say this. I always hear sometimes people say this, I don't have enough money to do what you do, Pastor Jordan. I don't have the money to do certain things. But these same people, I see them at the game and sitting in front of me.
Eating what?
Oh yeah, eating food at SoFi Stadium. Then look, I put my shoes up here, but they wearing the freshest. They wearing Air Jordans, 32s, like ones that ain't even came out yet. But then they have that problem. So what we want to do is we want to be able to manage what we have. So we already taught budgeting classes. We already did that. But now one of the things we want to do is talk about how to invest their money. So right now, you guys, one of the things that we always teach is this. There's something called say-vesting. That means we're saving and we're investing the money. So there are a couple ways of investing. One is owning stock. So just so you guys know, what stock is ownership in a company. That means you own a company. It's a fractional share, you own it. So if you look at it, like let's say, and I'm just using examples, Bill Gates, and you'll say that is Microsoft. So you can own shares of Microsoft. If you guys hear something, and whenever I speak to kids, the first thing they bring up is Tesla. So that's Elon Musk. So you can own shares of that company, which, by the way, I did a separate podcast we're doing, is they had a stock split and everything like that. So you understand how they grow. So what happens is you can own ownership in a company. The second thing you can do is buy a bond. A bond is you loan money to somebody, and then they give you the principal back plus interest. A good example would be a CD or a U.S. savings bond. Right now, there's something called I-bonds, which stands for inflation. They actually pay, currently, while we're taping, over 9%. They're bonds, and they have like limits, $10,000 limits, but that's an option that people can do. They can own a stock, or you can own a bond. Third option, which we suggest for a lot of people, is to own a mutual fund. The term mutual fund it is pooling money together in order to buy an investment. So instead of buying one stock, you can own a mutual fund, and they may have about 300 stocks or more in there. So that adds diversity. A mutual fund, you guys, is a lot like riding a bus. You get on the bus, right? You pay a fare. And then the bus says, I'm going somewhere. I went to the Dodger game like about a week ago with my kids doing the world's greatest thing. So it'll say, I'm going downtown. I'm going here. But it'll say certain things. Bond, growth in income, growth, and it'll outline what the goal is. Mm-hmm. Why someone may want to invest in a mutual fund is low barrier to entry. You can start most mutual funds with $250. Second thing is it's diversified. You just don't own one company. 3 is they pick all the investments. All you do is put the money in. So it gives people an opportunity to be able to invest and be able to do that. The reason why I say is that you see questions that people ask us all the time is, how do I get started? What do I invest in? And how do I invest? So I want to ask you guys something, and we'll do something with also for you. We do something called New Eyes. You know New Eyes, right?
Yes.
So New Eyes is, before you go out and invest something, you want to go out and say, sometimes people say this, I don't know that much about investing, but actually people do. So you guys, we do an exercise called New Eyes. We're going to let you participate, and then we'll fill in the blanks, okay? So New Eyes is this. Look at what you spend money on, and then see how you're going to actually invest in that. So you remember, whenever you make money, you can spend it, lend it, or own something. So look at something that you spend money on right now. So something people would, when you get up in the morning, let's walk through your day. Where are your sheets, or where do they maybe come from? Your bedding, stuff like that. May come, I'll just name places. Where's one place? Target?
Macy's, yeah.
Macy's? Okay, that's good. Walmart? Or you just say where they came from. If you guys are typing, you can type them down, right? Then let's say you take a shower, which I think is a very good idea. If you get up in the morning and you do that, where is the soap come from? Where are the things like that that are in your bathroom? And you guys, also, if you're in the chat, start typing in names in the chat that you would get that from. So that would be, start naming some names.
Bath and Body Works.
Bath and Body Works. Colgate.
Yeah.
Procter and Gamble. And if I say Procter and Gamble, we'll be saying this about 10 times, right?
Yeah.
Then let's say you get out of the shower, you have your towels, where they come from. I'm going to go through this. Now I'm going to start going quicker. Then you brush your teeth. You don't brush your teeth, right? Okay, if you don't, I highly suggest that. Where's your toothpaste come from?
Same place.
Companies.
Yeah.
Colgate, Procter and Gamble. Wash your clothes. What do you use? And then, by the way, Tide is Procter and Gamble. Not plugging them, but you guys understand that during a pandemic, people still wash their clothes, didn't they? People during a pandemic, actually, they wash their clothes more, which I highly suggest. So they're doing all of these things. Look at what you're doing. Where's your cell phone? What company makes your cell phone? Who's your cell phone carrier? How do you use different ones? And then I'm gonna, before we even leave the house, where do you get your breakfast from? Where do you go and then pay them $5, $6, $7 a day for the coffee and the scone or whatever else you're getting there? Crystal, tell us a little bit about when we did we just recently did a water distribution. And I think you remember, you told me when I talked to the driver, one of the things that kind of happened when I talked to him.
Oh, he suggested that he didn't listen to the radio any longer and that he listened to things that edified him when he was driving. I guess we won't say his name.
Right.
Put him on the spot.
Right.
But some of the things that he actually did while he was in the cab of the car driving across country. And Pastor George, I don't remember specifically what it was, but he did talk about learning more about investing, learning more about him actually making money or more money than when he was driving.
And we're going to talk about that actually on another show about how he's making money. But one of the things that we talked about was really good that Chris said was that, so we were having a conversation with him, and one of the things he said about investing. So I sent him this podcast. I sent him our show. And then when I was in Mississippi, when I met him, he came right out of the car and he goes like this. He goes, you know what I'm going to do? And he was all excited. I got nervous a little first. And I said, what are you going to do? He said, now I'm going to write down every load that I drop off, where it came from. He goes, you know, when you were talking, and he said, I watch Walmart trucks drive by all the time. I said, you know, you can own stock in that company. And then he said, and he started naming the different products and things he drops off. And I said, if you're dropping off this, then you understand that's how that works. And then that's also an investment. So then we walk through that. So he was excited about it. He didn't know that that's how you invest. And that's how you do that. So the same way that he did that, I want you to do that way. So right now, I want you to write down 10 companies that you utilize. Just think about that on a daily basis that have to do with your work. And then also, Danette, people came and they told me at my work, they started naming companies. We order from this company every day, all the time. And we said, why don't you start listing them? And then look at companies that can do well. If you remember, I had done a show with Bishop Van Moody, and it was we talked with her in the pandemic, and I said, let's list pandemic stocks. Let's list companies that can do good during a pandemic. You know, we listed them all. You know that ones that would do well during a pandemic. And then right now, one of the things that happens is people say, what would be good now? Mm-hmm. I knew you would ask that. So right now, what type of environment are we in? High inflation, almost hyperinflation. California gas was like $6, $7. It's gone down a little bit. But as I've traveled around the country, gas was higher. It's going down some. But we had inflation. Then we also have higher interest rates. And the third is we have wars. I'm using the term, what are the term they use on TV? Geopolitical risk. So what are companies that can do well during that time? And then say, who can do that? So it's retailers that you go to. If they raise their prices, they still are making the same amount of profit they were making before. So instead of just spending that, doing that. Then also on a previous show, we talked about gas companies. If they do that, then you can get paid something called dividends, and also the stocks are also the companies. So what we want to do is learn how to invest in those type of areas. Danette, in the Bible, it says in Matthew 25:14, it says that somebody went out and they had 5 talents and they went out and doubled it. Crystal, they said that the person had 2 talents, went out there and they doubled it. There was someone with 1 talent, they went out there and buried it in the ground. Now I'm talking to you. What are some of the reasons why do you think people fail financially? Like they just don't do it.
The number one is fear. It's always fear.
Gotcha. It's fear, and then we want to go over the why that, how to overcome that. But okay, number 1 is fear. By the way, I have 4 of them listed, and I wrote down that as number 2. But we're gonna have all 4 number 1. So fear, but also I want them before I kick it over to Danette, because she actually helps people overcome this, and I'll tell you what it is in doing it. But actually, the number 1 reason why people are not successful financially is they do not start. That is the number 1 reason they do not start. I will come back to that. Danette?
I am going to just jump in here because I do want to have a kitchen table conversation. I've been listening, and sometimes when I'm hearing some of the things, I get a little disheartened because what comes to mind for me is the lack of education and information that people have. Now, mind you, I feel like we shouldn't be widening a gap at this point. Crystal brought this up earlier, and I'm like, we have way more information now than we did back when our parents, our grandparents were growing up. We have a pool of information. I mean, the internet is more like the library right now. So I think that if people would take heed to what it is that we're talking about today, that there would be a better ability to start. Because when you say lack of starting, it comes from that fear, which stems from the lack of education. And then there's a mental piece that goes with that as well.
But I want to go back to the education, because see, before someone didn't know. But now, so that before it was knowledge. But I tell you what the problem I think is right now, and I want to get you guys, I think the problem is right now is there's so much information out there.
There is.
Yeah.
There's no wisdom. If I got, you guys see this, because it's so funny. She works with me at an investment firm. She works here with the church with me. That's why I wanted you guys to be here so I could get these. Is that people come up to me and they're always like, hey, I heard that you should put all this, like we've done the whole thing with the crypto thing. We've done the whole thing with and I'm not saying what to invest in, what not to invest in, but I feel like there's people that are taking them down the wrong path that haven't actually done investing. And there's just so much out there. And I think whoever talks the loudest and says you don't have to do anything, that it's just really simple, I think there's a lot with that.
Yeah, growing up, I think, as parents don't know, so children don't know. I mean, there's a group of, nobody's blind. They can see all 3 of us are African American. But what happens in the African American community is that we aren't reared with this information. So as you become an adult, of course you're going to be afraid. There is an overwhelming amount of information that's out there, and you don't know who to believe or what to believe. But other demographics are rearing their children to understand how to build wealth because they actually have something. See, a lot of the folks in the, call it inner city, or those that haven't been passed on wealth, which I know we're going to talk about, there's a lack of education because there's also a lack of access. You know what I mean? So, don't get me talking about reparations, but because that's another topic for a different day. But if we were to get such a large amount of money, whatever they're proposing, what would somebody do with that? Even this conversation would lend to, if you were to get a large sum of money, what would you do with it? Because not having money and investing is one thing, but getting money and not knowing what to do with it is another thing. So.
That's actually the parable. That's actually the parable in the Bible.
Exactly.
But if you look at it though, And that's something we can even type in. I want to have that in the conversations. Also, type in the chat. If you were given, you want 100,000 or a million? Let's do a million.
They said 350 is coming our way individually, but that's a different story.
Wow,
I'll send you the email.
Cool. You send me an email. So let's say you were given, let's just say, let's
Make
go
it even, 100?
$500,000.
Ooh, I like that
If you were given that, what would you do with it? And then type that in the chat, what you would do with $500,000, okay? Now, this is something very interesting also. Some people would say this, I'm gonna take and pay off all my debt without going through anything or sitting down and doing it. And also, I'm a fan of paying off debt and doing it. But then let's say even, because there's sometimes when people say, I'm gonna get this on and pay off the debt. Then they still starting with zero.
Correct.
And then they're doing that. So then they want to sit. So what we're going to do is look at, hey, if we want to take it and invest it, then how we invest it. So then I'm going to assume the next most popular answer is going to be, I'm going to hire a financial advisor.
Oh, you know that's not the answer they gonna give you. I was gonna go with another answer.
Go ahead. But I
most people
Go
gonna either buy a car or a house, one or the other.
Gotcha. So what's the difference between buying a car and the difference between buying a house? A car is a
Depreciating asset versus.
Good. I'm so forward to looking at. I'm so forward. I'm looking at the chat right now. You guys type in what you guys want to do because people want to sit down there and they want to say it because that's very interesting. Because if we change it from 500,000 to 50, would that change people's perspective? Say, yeah, I'm just going to buy a car because I can't.
Yeah.
I'm in the middle of a house and doing it. So I'm sorry. What do you think somebody would do?
Actually, we think alike. That's why we get along so well. We're kindred spirits, even before we knew it. The same thing. They're going to say a car or a house, but you say 50,000. Yeah, they're going to pay off debt, and then they're going to purchase that car. Or if it's someone, I don't want to even do the stereotype, Pastor George, but we have dreams of grandeur, right? Particularly in our community. So instead of, you guys know I'm frugal.
Right.
I got to look at the camera and tell you, we already talked about this in other episodes.
Right.
Instead of going to buy the $20,000, $25,000 car, and right now in this market, I understand it's a little, that's asking a lot, but they're going to go and spend $55,000, not 50. They're going to spend the 55, and that again.
Right. If they have $50,000, they're going to walk out with a car payment.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
Exactly.
Okay.
But that goes back to what you started off with. When people get money,
Yes.
three things, right? The first one, which is what we're talking about, they're going to spend it. You want them to get a financial advisor. And of course, we know that that is the right answer. I've seen it happen so many times, whether it's entertainers, I grew up in this town, whether it's, athletes. Remember the commercial they used to do? What you just won the Super Bowl? What you about to do? I'm going to Disneyland. I'm about to invest this money, because they don't talk about the money, but they just made a pretty penny.
Right.
How much did they spend on that Super Bowl ring? That ring, it's amazing, by the way. Right. That ring, they own assets. They have things. People have things. We might have less than some have more than others, but the investment part, that lending it,
correct.
That's what we're talking about today, and people don't get. When they think lend, they think I'm lending to somebody, they're going to give it back.
Right.
But the principle is what is coming back. What is the yield on that investment? So you can take it from there at this kitchen table conversation because people are spending money like crazy, and butter is $6. That's another conversation. But it's inflation as well. Where people aren't making a lot more money, but costs of actual things are going up. So people might say, well, I can't invest because I don't make any more money. So therefore, I get in debt and I'm constantly having to dig myself out of that hole. So
right. And so that goes to having a plan. But so we look at it now, and that was good feedback, and I'm so looking forward to the chat when people get the money, because and then also we have to look at the people that we're going to say invest, but they really go, if they really got it, no, they really would spend it.
They will.
And in different areas. But that's also where we start working on. I do have to say this, mindset is, if you look at that, there's a mindset of wealth. And then there's a mindset of poverty, that's why when you get something, what are you going to do with that and everything? And also you want to teach your kids so now whenever they get some money, that you start that. Like the first thing I do with my kids is that when they get something, they give first, then they can put this also, then they invest second, and then the third part, they can just spend it. But see, I'm starting to teach that cycle early.
That's what I mean.
And then we're going to do that. We're going to have upcoming shows also in the area of kids and investing. And we're going to bring some parents in here.
College students too. I think even when they go off to college, one of the problems that people have is they get a job and they start spending. Right. And then you turn around and you start talking about investing and tithing or anything else that has to do with saving. And they're like, I don't have any left over.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So that's why you want to teach people early. So I want to go over the 4 reasons why people are not financially successful. Number 1 is not starting. I'm going to come back to that. I'll close with that. Number 2 is fear. 3 is not having the proper information, wisdom. Yes. So that is number 3. And number 4 is tailgaters, meaning that they're pushing the cart up the hill, and then what they have, you guys, they have people in their family that actually live with them above age 18 in their house and drain them of their resources.
That doesn't happen.
Write that down.
Like a party to me.
I was like, I didn't know what we were coming up with that one today.
Because what's tailgating? They just sitting around partying, but you the one paying. And then I've changed it because I had a sermon before and I called them zookeepers. Ooh. So what a zookeeper is that one time I went down to the LA Zoo with my kids. And I went down there previous to me going to Africa. I went to Africa, like let's say 10 years ago, and I saw a real lion. And I saw that real lion out there on that safari, and he was just sitting there. And, we had we were driving a little car and everything was a little fine, everybody was in there. When that lion roared, everything stopped.
Okay.
And he could do that. So that's a real lion. I was so excited to take my kids down to the LA Zoo. I took my kids on there and I was like this. I went and looked at this exhibit, looked at this exhibit, looked at that exhibit. I said, let's go down to the lions. And then I ran up to the lion cage and the lion was laying there. Yeah. Then they laid out some meat for him. And the women walking by, they laid out a little bit of meat for him. And he went there and went like this. Then all of a sudden, then my kids were coming up. And then I said, this is a lion in captivity.
Oh my gosh, okay.
And I said, quite simply, this lion is in captivity. So he doesn't have to hunt or go out and get his own food or go out and do his own work or anything like that. And then I said, the zookeeper laid the food down for him. And what many people are doing, and I'm saying about African Americans, and we're doing this is, we're doing something called zookeeping. So what we're doing is we're taking a lion and we're declawing them, and then we're letting them just sit here and do absolutely nothing. And what happens is when you teach people that they don't have to work or they don't have to provide for their family, then they keep doing that. And also it's like almost learned not to do this. So the opposite of that is us training people or people learning to do that and learning to grow. And then what happens is if you just take care of somebody, which is number 4, and they don't do anything, you're just a zookeeper. Ooh. But today I tried to be nice and call it tailgating.
Yeah, let's go back to tailgating, because with my Urban League hat on, I don't want to be affiliated with none of. We gonna smooth this out right now. No animal analogies in the African American community. People don't like it. But I'm just saying, I love the tailgating, and that is a good analogy. That lion story was really good, because when you give people that, when you're constantly feeding them, when you're constantly giving to them, when you're constantly catering to them, when you started yawning with the lion, I mean, the lion should be roaring. It should be vital. It should be, but when what happens in our community is that we do get caged in. We have been boxed in, and we have been literally, I don't want to get into the topics of this because there's a whole different discussion, but we have been trained to do this, to spend our money. We have been trained to be consumers. We have been indoctrinated with commercials and bells and whistles and being part of the elite by looking. What is the saying? You say walk the walk, or what? Wait.
Fake it till you make it.
There it is. Fake it till you make it, right? And so people believe that if they have these things, it makes them appear as though they have something that they don't. So that training, you just said it, it's been learned. All of it's been learned. So now we have to retrain people's thinking so that they're not being affiliated with being animals in the zoo and being kept by the master, because who is that? We don't get into that, but I'm giving back to you.
So, parent, good. So we're good.
You know, I'm not going to do the power to the people conversation today.
Gotcha. So, everyone, no, that's good. And I want to thank you guys also for coming. And we're also going to continue also on the area of investing. But what's so important, and also the challenge, what I was saying is that as we're spent the same amount of time we spend just hanging out, providing for people, we want to also give that person the opportunity to grow, build wealth, do it that way, and then show it. So we're actually going to have another episode where we're going to be going over investing, actually the process of going to it, strategies, retirement, and then we're going to show you how to build wealth God's way. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of The Wealth Cycle. Hey family, give me a high five. I bet you there's 5 people that you can think of that you can share this with. We want to make it easy for you to ask a question. Just put it right there in the chat. We may not be able to answer all the questions, but we'll do our very best.